First, after being held captive for well over a year, 15 months in fact, today finally 3 Israeli hostages were returned to their families. Now, I can't imagine, few of us can, the horrors that Emily, Romy and Daron must have lived through during their 471 days of captivity at the hands of Hamas terrorists. However, we can't overlook the fact that at the same time, 90 Palestinian terrorist prisoners also walked free, with more set to be freed as well. Joining me now live from Tel Aviv is Arsen Ostrovsky, the CEO of the International Legal Forum and Senior Fellow at the Misgav Institute for National Security. Arsen, thank you for your time. A huge day for every Israeli and every supporter of Israel too around the world, here on Sky News in particular. We have tried to stand in solidarity with you throughout the horrors of the last 15 months. What's been the reaction of the release of these 3 women today in Israel?
Oh, look, it's really quite incredible scenes. On the one hand, yesterday, I think there was a sense of relief, a sense of joy and jubilation after 471 days. These girls, Emily, Romy, Daron, were finally coming home after what can only be described as pure hell. I stood there yesterday with so many others at Tel Aviv's Hostage Square, which has become now synonymous with the congregation of those in solidarity with the hostages, and essentially, an entire nation stood still there with a collective breath, waiting for these girls to be home in the hands of the IDF and then finally in the hands of their loved ones. But we know these are difficult days ahead, and as you said, 90 Palestinian terrorists were released, many more will be released, and we also have many more hostages still in captivity which need to come out urgently.
What concerns me, and I was just talking to the Australian Shadow Attorney General, so on the opposition side of politics, there's no confirmation from our Prime Minister here in Australia that we will oppose any of these Palestinians ending up in Australia. What can you tell us about their likely destination?
Look, that depends on a number of different calculations and who these terrorists are. And that's something, again, I think we also have to underscore. Some have called this a prisoner exchange. This is not a prisoner exchange. The Israelis coming out hostages are women, children, the elderly, the wounded. The Palestinians that are coming out are convicted terrorists and murderers with blood on their hands. Some will go overseas. Many of them will not go into Gaza. Some will. It really depends on who they are, the nature of their crimes, the nature of their convictions. But certainly no one wants to see these terrorists out. But unfortunately, Israel had no option. We had to make literally a deal with the devil in order to get our loved ones out.
Yeah, look, I can't begrudge what you did, no one can. I mean, I worked for the Prime Minister during the time of Islamic State, and was privy to some security briefings in relation to the women who were seized by Islamist terrorists at that time. And if I even think about what I was told, I'd be in tears on TV tonight. How is this going to change the way that Israel governs into the future, how it sees its security situation? Because for years you've been under pressure from the international community to bend and to yield. And look where that got you. What happens here in a geopolitical sense next?
Yeah, look, it's a good question. I think had Israel yielded and bended to the demands of the international community, including, by the way, Australia, and Penny Wong, who called on Israel not to go into Rafah, and Rafah is where we've found a number of the hostages. It's where the Hamas leader Yahya Sinwar was taken out. So I think had Israel listened to the international community and wielded and bended to their will, I think the situation would have been far more drastic. Far more so than it even is today. But I think, look, there's already lessons that have been learned. Israel is no longer sitting idly by. Israel is taking a very proactive stance against these terrorists. We've seen what Israel has done to eliminate arch terrorists like Ismail Haniyeh in Iran, Hezbollah leader Hassan Nasrallah. We saw the pager attacks. So Israel's certainly not taking orders from anyone, and Israel, like any sovereign nation, like Australia would, by the way, as well, is taking whatever action necessary in order to defend itself and to rescue its citizens from absolute hell.
Well, I hope we would, Arsen, but I'm not entirely convinced with the current regime. Your Deputy Foreign Minister was scathing about the Labor government here and the connection that she feels is patently obvious between Labor's change in rhetoric and position at the United Nations about Israel and a horrific increase in anti-Semitic attacks in this country. Is that a fair comment, do you think?
I think she was probably being even far too diplomatic, to be honest, in my opinion. You know, I heard Prime Minister Albanese talk about the relief of the hostages finally coming back to Israel, but we also have to remember that the Albanese government also voted against Israel at the United Nations in a resolution that would have abandoned the hostages. And they made absolutely no linkage between any proposed ceasefire and the hostages. In fact, the resolution didn't even mention Hamas, for that matter. We've also seen the Australian government refuse to confirm that they would not abide by these outrageous ICC warrants. We've seen resumption of funding in UNRWA and, of course, anti-Semitism raging unabated. So, unfortunately, what had for many years been a very strong and principled bipartisan support of Israel would appear that under this Labor government, it's sadly Australia has abandoned its ally and in its time of need.
Well, I'll let you know that that's just the Australian government, the Australian people.
Absolutely.
I think broadly across the country stand with you and the opposition and Sky News, as I said. Arsen Ostrovsky, thank you for your time.